Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. After the shocking end to Earthshock, it is time for us to say goodbye to Adric in this week's special Rambling in the TARDIS. As always, we'll be discussing Adric's strengths and weaknesses, as well as our picks for his best and worst episodes.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on Adric and his time in the TARDIS. So, as always, to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, X, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteamp@teamproductions.com. So, I was going to say something and then it's going to sound really, really horrible.
Go on.
Another one bites the dust.
Do, 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 do. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Not so much bites the dust as becomes dust.
That's even worse.
Yep.
Oh, God.
That's me. I'm the gallows humor expert of this show. But it's all for a good cause, because without Adric's presence, we would still be living under like a tyrannical Saurian empire, and humanity wouldn't have come about, supposedly. Yeah. Well done, Adric.
For those of you not familiar with our rambling format, what we do is we look at the character, we discuss what are their weaknesses and their strengths as characters in the show, and then we rank their 3 worst episodes. Not always 3, but usually 3 worst episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then their 3 best episodes. And the way we do that
Yes.
is we do 3, 2, 1, where 1 is the worst. It's the
Yes.
worst. And then 3, 2, 1, where 1 is the best.
Yes. We go from worst best to best best, and best worst to worst worst.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off with weaknesses.
Yes. And you did the socials, so you get to go first.
Yeah. So before we go into Adric's specific weaknesses, I do need to call out, and I was listening back over to our previous episodes to sort of get myself back in the Adric mindset. Um, I need to take you back to like when we first talked about Adric in Full Circle and Warriors Gate and all those. Adric is sort of a proto Wesley Crusher esque character. And I think as we discuss his weaknesses and his strengths and his worst and best episodes, we need to bear in mind that though the character was originally written by a teenager, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
um, he does suffer from being a super intelligent young male character on a show written by adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so, before I go into his weaknesses, I do want to bear in mind that a lot of the issues that people have with Adric, and a lot of the issues that I've had with Adric, a lot of those stem from poor, inconsistent writing
Mm-hmm.
and people not knowing how to write a young, intelligent teenager, particularly
Yeah.
a male, young, intelligent teenager. I've said before that there's been moments where it's very much, Wesley's I'm with Starfleet and we don't lie type of bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
where he's just given the most utter nonsense to say. Um, and also he's written incredibly inconsistently. So for me, I think the biggest weakness of Adric as a character is I think he was written at a time and by people who were mostly disconnected from relating to Adric. If
Mm-hmm.
you think about more modern shows that have the young savant or the young whatever, they're much more understanding of the fact that just because he's intelligent doesn't mean he's not 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like even just the likes of I'm not a big fan of the universe of the show, but like the likes of young Sheldon, right, where Sheldon
Yeah.
is very intelligent, but he's also a child, and they have moments where he just uses child logic, and he has childish reactions to things, even though he's wise, quote unquote, wise beyond his years. So I think for me, the biggest weakness of Adric is the fact that he's so badly written, and so inconsistently written. But
Mm.
through that bad and inconsistent writing, there are two weaknesses that really stand out kind of over the entire run. I think it becomes much more prominent in um, the Peter Davison side of the coin, so post Legopolis,
Mm-hmm.
which is his ginormous fucking ego, and how very easily it gets bruised.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeding into this sort of chauvinistic asshole nature. So
Mm-hmm.
we know he's a very intelligent character. We're told that pretty much from the first moment we meet him. But he has a little bit of Zoe in him at the start where he he believes he's the most intelligent person in the room. With Romana and the doctor, that was obviously not fucking true. And so that sort of kowtowed him a little bit. We got to see him be a bit humble. We got to see him learn from the others, etc. Then suddenly, he's the boy genius with Nissa and Tegan in tow. And we see a lot of him getting butthurt because his ideas aren't being listened to, or they're making, quote unquote, making fun of him because one of his ideas didn't work, or he's just being a bit of a chauvinistic dickhead, um, and making stupid decisions and making stupid comments.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things, though, so ego at that level, easily bruised ego, chauvinistic, holier than thou nature, kind of tie into that poor writing of the young, intelligent male character. Again, we take Sheldon as an example. Even in The Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon is an adult, he still thinks women aren't as intelligent as him, and that's just poor writing of
Mm.
intelligent male characters. Which is ironic when you consider that the most intelligent male character on the show, the Doctor, rarely, if ever, treats the female women in his life like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when he does, aka John Pertwee with Katie Manning's character, you know, they prove him wrong, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
he sort of has to eat a bit of humble pie. Um, so I think, like I said, for me, I think the main weaknesses are his ego and his sexist nature at
Mm.
times, not all the time as well, by the way, but at times. But that comes down to the very poor writing and I think the lack of a plan for him as a character.
Yeah.
Like they clearly had a plan for him with Tom, but then when Tom left, they didn't know what they wanted to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I will say that I think his weaknesses became stronger in like more pronounced and more obvious
Yeah.
in the Peter Davison era than they ever were in the Tom era.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so those were my three and my bit of a rambling on the badly written part. But what do you think? What did you have down for weaknesses?
Uh, so I agree with you for a fair amount of it because I was like, in retrospect, now having gone on the full journey with Adric, it's easy to see, like as I said, in retrospect, that a lot of the flaws he has
Mm,
are as a result of the fact that he's a teenage wonderkind.
mm,
You know, um, like we talked about his arrogance and his ego, um, which comes from, look, he was lauded on his home planet because he has that fucking badge of mathematical excellence, and he's everyone keeps blowing smoke up his ass, and then he is essentially Robin to Tom's Batman for a while,
mm,
Um, and it's the bruised ego then comes from, yeah, it's like when it's understandable when the bruised ego is not when that there's another person of intelligence there, but when that person is superseded in the attention that the doctor gives.
Mm,
Like, we when he first meets Nissa, it's there's a common bond between them,
mm,
and like, they both have their expertise, and there's no tension or nothing there. It isn't until, as you said, and it's often it is in the Peter Davison era where all these flaws are heightened. It isn't until the Doctor starts kind of taking Nissa under the wing a bit more that he starts getting the fucking hump. And then it's so, like, that is all very, as we said, that's very teenage behavior.
mm,
Where I do find it hard to rationalize it a bit more is the misogyny,
mm,
because when he was on the TARDIS with Romana, maybe it was by virtue of the fact that she's older, it wasn't there. There was none of these fucking like snarky comments about her intelligence. Well, we had Keeper of Traken, we had Legopolis. There was none of that. Again, he respected Nissa's intelligence. But then you come into Fort of Doomsday and the stories that lead on from that, then it's all, oh, well, you're a girl, so you can't be as smart as I am. I was like, where the fuck did this come from?
yeah, and like the interesting about that is, so you raised a point there that actually I thought about earlier on. If you listen back to Keeper of Traken, I was saying I was really looking forward to seeing him and Nissa together
I was
on the
the same.
TARDIS. They were total like science siblings, and it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. And we didn't really get it, which is very disappointing. But the interesting thing, right, is you're like, where did this come from? Like, he wasn't that chauvinistic with Romana. He had a couple of, like, light moments, but nothing ever
Mm.
anywhere near as bad as what we got with Nissan Tegan. He learns from his elders. We've said it before. The Fifth Doctor treats particularly Tegan like shit a lot of the time.
Mm.
Like in Legopolis, they all got along really, really well.
Yeah.
Most of Castrovalva, Adric wasn't there. He was in the web thing. And then after Castrovalva, and the way I see it, he sees the way the Doctor is treating them, and so he starts treating them that way. But then the Doctor doesn't treat them like that way all the time, and so it becomes this sort of hodgepodge. He learns from the Doctor, do you know?
Yeah. Because,
Which is
like,
interesting.
with Tegan, it becomes a case of there is an actual element of punching down, because Tegan has her Tegan has her lane for where her skill set lies.
Mm,
But it's not in the same category as Nissa nor Adric, and Adric uses that against her, and it's essentially of in my opinion, it boils down to, what do you know? You're fucking thick,
mm,
and it's like, and that's where it's like, do you know what? I know you're a 15-year-old child, but still, you deserve a fucking clipper on the back of the head,
mm,
and that's where, you know, I can't remember if I said it on in the previous episodes, but it was actually getting it wasn't enjoyable to watch those stories
mm.
for a multitude of reasons, and Adric's attitude and Adric's characterization was a contributing factor to that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree. Should we talk about his
But
strengths, though?
yes, I was about to say, but he is he's not like that one person that we struggle to come up with for something. He does have areas where we really like him in. So
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and uh, for me, I think the three things that stand out for Adric for me, and one of these things is going to seem like a bit of a contradiction based off what we just said, but again, see previous point about inconsistent writing.
Mhm.
He's intelligent. There is no fucking denying the boy is intelligent. Now, is it a bit of a teenager who's going around wearing his special badge all day, every day? I'm pretty sure he sleeps with the special badge on. Yeah, okay, there's a bit much, but he is really intelligent. He's a really good mathematician.
Hmm.
He is also incredibly brave. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that gets ignored about Adric. Yeah, sometimes he's a bit foolhardy. Do you know, he runs in wanting to play hero, but he still runs in. Do you
Mhm.
know? Whether that was in Full Circle, his very first outing, where he
Mhm.
showed great bravery in a very weird situation from his point of view, or whether it's in Earthshock, where again, and you could say that it's ego, or you could say it was, wanting to play the hero, but like he would do anything to fix the problem,
Yeah.
including risking his own life, and he's incredibly brave. Again, I think when we watch science fiction programs in particular, actually, that have young characters. So again, we're thinking of, Star Trek Next Generation or Deep Space Nine or, you know, um, more modern like fantasy shows and stuff like that with young characters. We tend to forget that like he's 15 years old. And you're like,
Mm.
oh, he's 15 years old, he's on this great space adventure. He's 15 years old and people keep fucking dying around him. His entire,
Mm.
like, his brother died, he lost Romana in E-space. The doctor that he looked up to and saw as a sort of father figure or
Mm.
mentor figure died, etc. And to keep
Even
going, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say even Tremas to an
Yeah,
extent.
yeah, because he was very close to Tremas as well. And so he goes through all this and he keeps going up until, and again, you can kind of say that like it was a bit childish and blah blah blah, but up until I think understandably for a 15-year-old boy, he kind of reached a breaking point where he was like, the people I'm traveling with don't even fucking like me. I want to go home.
Mhm.
Do you know? And the fact that like it took him so long to reach that point, I think is commendable in its own right. Um, but I think sometimes, and like I sort of see Adric in that vein, similar to like Victoria, where I think people
Mhm.
overlooked how brave Victoria often was,
Mhm.
because she was so often seen as the damsel in distress. I think because Adric is so often seen as someone trying to play hero, people forget that that does involve him being willing to jump into very dangerous situations.
Mhm.
Um, the one that I think might seem a bit hypocritical based off what I said about his weaknesses is, and I do believe this even with Nissa and Tegan, particularly even with Tegan, at his core, he does care about his friends.
Mm.
He is very defensive of them. He kind of had a bit of a Ben of what about Polly, what about Polly, what about Polly in certain
Mhm.
stories. Um, he does really care, and we see that through the loss of Romana. We see it through his struggle to adapt to the new Doctor, or even in Logopolis, his constant, protective nature over the Doctor. He then became very protective of Nyssa and Tegan during that whole story as well. And I said during the Peter Davison era, he didn't quite have as many opportunities to showcase it, but it was
Yeah.
there. Like even his clap back to the Doctor in Earthshock, where the Doctor's like, oh, he made it. He's like, oh, I know what your promises are worth, just ask Tegan. You're like,
Hmm.
he can see that, like, you keep promising her you'll take her home and you fucking don't. So, like, you know, stop trying to gaslight us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think that that can be overshadowed by the fact that half his episodes, it doesn't look like he cares.
It the thing was that, and I was kind of tracking it in my head, is that he finally realizes that he doesn't need to be that way around Tegan, because Tegan is the linchpin in
Mm,
this whole thing, because he knows what Nissa is capable of, and he
yeah,
knows like that Nissa is very resourceful. He hasn't seen anything from Tegan to warrant that same level of whatever you want to call it, because all he's seen from Tegan is, I want to go home, I want to go home, bitch, bitch, moan, moan, I want to go home. And then there was the whole thing in Kinda where, she was the gateway for the Mara. It isn't until the visitation where they're both essentially locked together that he actually sees, oh no, she is actually quite resourceful. And then, unfortunately, we get Black Orchid, where all he's doing is just fucking eating, and then you have Earthshock.
mm,
So that realization comes too late in his character arc to actually for us to get to enjoy that growth.
yeah. But at the beginning, he is very defensive of her. And I think I mean, obviously, had he been present in Castrovalva technically wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
But you know what I mean? Had he been present in Castrovalva to see Tegan rolling up her sleeves, getting stuck in, leading from the front, I think his reaction to her in other stories would have been very, very different.
Mm. No, I agree. I agree.
Did you have any other strengths?
Um, there was one thing that came into my head, and it was based like on your thing about in Earthshock, whether it was ego or I can't remember the last thing you said, but I know you have issues with this character, but there's a line from pre-serum Steve Rogers
Mm,
that kind of resonates with Adric, which is um, when he continually tries to get drafted and Bucky tells him not to.
mm.
Steve's thing was that there are men laying down their lives. Why should I be any different? And
Because you're an asthmatic son of a bitch who can't do anything, and you're gonna get men killed trying to take care of
mm,
you.
but you know, but no, but see, this is the thing, right? Okay, is that like, yeah, no, like he is a. I put this right. He's a liability in that regards because he's continually 4F.
Yeah.
But you, and like it's a thing like you often see. Um, I suppose should like I'll get a small bit political here now, right?
Mm,
You often see this conversation coming up with surrounding um, gay people in the military,
yeah.
and you have a lot of people giving out, "Oh, they shouldn't be there, shouldn't be there," and it's like, okay, if you don't want them in there, are you going to volunteer in their place? Because they want to be there. So are you going to fucking step up and do the job? If not, shut up.
Mm,
With Steve's thing, it's like, okay, look, there's an awful lot you could get drafted into the army, but you're not going to serve on the front line. You can work in logistics, you can work in whatever, you can do all this type of stuff that we can get you into the army, and you won't have to do frontline service because you can't actually take it. Then it's like, okay, he's risking himself in some capacity, but just not in a frontline capacity. With
mm.
Adric, sorry, still have that bit of the residue of chest infection. With Adric, its whole thing is people around me are risking their lives. Why should I be any different?
Yeah. And okay, me not liking Captain America is a whole. We could do a whole separate podcast about why Trish fucking hates Captain America.
We
Um,
really could.
we really could. I fucking hate that character. Um, but I get what you mean, though.
Yeah.
And again, I think with Adric, it's defense of those he cares about in the case of Full Circle, and then it's seeing the bravery of those around him in the case of
Hmm.
traveling with the Doctor.
Hmm.
And again, I think a lot of it is like I said, like they're doing this. Why I need to do my part, but
Hmm.
also this person I look up to would do anything to save people. Why why should I be any different? Um,
And one other thing as well is something that does, I think, come with his age, is his, at times his tenderness.
mm,
Like specifically again with Nissa when he comforts her over the loss of, like, with everything that happens with her dad and with Draken itself. Um, there are some tender moments that he has there. Like I think that you, because he's so less jaded than some older than of, like, if he was older he might be, but because he's not, he actually he lets himself have those moments with her, and I like that.
mm,
But no,
yeah,
I completely agree with you as well about, like, him, like when it's time, he never shies away from danger. He knuckles down, he gets involved. So yeah, like he does have. It just seems like such an annoyance that when we finally, or when Adric finally figures out who he wants to be, he dies.
mm, yeah. Oh, poor Adric.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to specific episodes though?
Yes, I think we should. We should back up our statements.
Yeah. So for worst, I do have three,
Hmm.
and in order of, to be honest, I really struggled with my worst ones because there was actually there was a lot of them. Um, so I picked three. They may not be the most accurate three, but they were the three that really stuck out for me for different reasons. In least worst, I had Warriors Gate.
All right.
In middle worst, I had Fort of Doomsday.
Mm-hmm.
And in worst, I had Kinda.
Okay.
What did you have?
We're 66% of the way there. In number three slot, I had State of Decay.
Mm,
In number two slot, I had Forward to Doomsday, and in number one slot, I had Kinda.
okay. I had considered State of Decay as well. Um, the reason why I went with Warriors Gate though is he's just sucking air. He's just there. And for all the story, he's just there flipping a coin. Um, I think for State of Decay, he had some really fucking stupid shite, particularly in the latter half of that story. But I think he had some really strong moments at the beginning of it.
That's where I was like struggling to kind of see, everything else I had for weaknesses is just lack of presence.
Mm,
Whereas here there is like character flaws to kind of back it up. And his fucking, oh, what was it? His interactions with Romana,
yeah,
and like I'm just, and from what I remember, is like, dude, like, you fucking stowed away on the ship.
yeah,
It's not her fucking fault about anything.
yeah. Like, I mean, the reason why I picked Warriors Gate over State of Decay was Warriors Gate for me was the biggest example of a non-Adric story. Like
Mm.
Castrovalva is also a non-Adric story for the most part,
Yeah.
but that's because he was kidnapped and he was hidden away.
Mm.
In Warriors Gate, he was fucking there. He was there every day on set, but he spent most time stood in the void flipping a fucking coin or not staring at the screen for the signal he's meant to be looking out for or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me, Warriors Gate sort of cinched it because it was a prime example of a non-story for him.
Mm.
Um, but I get where you are with State of Decay. So do you want to talk a bit more about State of Decay, or did you
Yeah,
have a thought?
like it was. It's like there are times there where he has positive moments, like his bits with the villagers, like this sort of being like the replacement son for the one that they lost. But the minute he goes up to the castle, and it's like, come on, Adric, you're fucking intelligent. You know what's going around here. These three are shady as fuck, and they're not even hypnotizing you at this stage. You seem to have thrown your lot in with them, and then there's just like the arrogance again towards Romana, and it's not justified whatsoever. It's like, dude, let us not forget here that you stowed away. They didn't kidnap you. They didn't force you against your will or anything like that. You fucking snuck onto the ship. And yes, I get that. Unfortunately, your brother died in the previous story. That's not their fault.
Mm.
And again, this is one of those things where it's like, oh well, he might have done it in the in between phase, was where I don't think he ever like brings it up again with Roman and apologizes to her.
Mm.
So yeah, um, didn't particularly care for that one.
Yeah, but he did have other stories that were worse.
Oh yeah. Oh Jesus. Does he what?
Yeah, so we both picked Four to Doomsday and Kinda. I think
Mm-hmm.
Four to Doomsday, more than anything for me, is the pinnacle of Adric the chauvinistic asshole.
Yep.
His whole fucking sniping at Nissa, that whole thing, um, and then he's also a total fucking donkey as well, because he actually buys into what these people are
Mm.
saying, and like he genuinely believes it. And I'm like, it's the weirdest writing of an episode where they have him being butthurt because Nissa knows more practical knowledge than him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's him trying to prove his intelligence by being a fucking moron. Now, I think the doctor does call him an idiot, which I wasn't quite sure I agreed with because he is also 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you were being no fucking help. Um, but I think for me, like Four to Doomsday is just like I'm trying to think of what a redeeming factor was in Four to Doomsday, and I don't think did we have redeeming factors for him in Four to Doomsday?
I don't think there is a redeeming factor for him in Forward to Doomsday.
Yeah. Um, except maybe like he did try and help the doctor fight off the guys like while the doctor was tethered and stuff like that. He did
He,
obviously contribute to that.
yeah,
Um,
but I don't think that necessarily makes up for the everything. Like, and this is the thing with Adrix. With it's like Adrix whole thing. I know block comp was a block transfer computation. I have the access to the building blocks of the universe. Cool. Are you able to work a microwave to heat up this packet of instant noodles? No. Good luck starving. Um, and like it's just the the jealousy rears its ugly head with like the doctor starts talking, necessarily like kind of catering towards her, and like there's some stuff there that Adric should really be aware of. One, this is the first story after she fully realizes that everyone is gone. Everyone that she knew and loved is gone. The doctor kind of showing her a bit of favoritism. Let it go. Come on, Elsa, let it go. Um, and then it's like, right, you've been around enough fucking maniacal leaders to be able to smell crazy after them at this stage. How the fuck are you still falling for this bullshit?
mm, yeah, and like I will say that like in the episodes that follow, I have a bit more empathy for Adric and his jealousy of Nissa because the doctor does go on to treat him and Tegan like total dog shit.
Mm.
Um, while Nissa always seems to get off scot free and is favored as the second. Whereas, like, hey, I thought you were mentoring me to be this great whatever, and then you've just fucking stopped. What the hell? Um, I have a bit of empathy for that, but like, it doesn't excuse anything. Like, do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And again, we don't get an apology of any sort. Um, I would say we also don't get any corrective behavior from the adult in his life. Um, which really he needed at that point.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I was looking back at my notes and I just have Adric is a chauvinistic asshole and an idiotic one at that.
I honestly, I'm going to be very curious when it comes to our rambling for Peter Davison and just see like how many of these worst episodes for Adric would coincide with the worst episodes for Peter.
Peter's one is going to be interesting, I think, because I mean, it's no secret because we discuss it every week. I'm really struggling to warm up to him,
Hmm.
and a lot of his worst traits are being reflected in Adric, which makes me
Like,
not like him all the more.
yeah. But I had a kind of a realization there the other day, and it was like we we witnessed like a character arc, be it intentional or unintentional, for Adric, um, and we're not now talking about like the reflection between Adric's character and Peter's character. So now that we've gotten the first season of Peter out of the way, it will be interesting to see what arc the character takes for the next two seasons, and see if we're just in like the rough honeymoon period, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I would be sad for the character of Adric if this um, disruptive behavior of the Doctor settled as soon as Adric died, because
Mm. Oh yeah.
it's like oh, but like he's not like that anymore. Like he really learned from like it's like when you have like someone who's like in a shitty relationship or whatever. Like, oh, he really learned from his relationship with that person, or he really learned from or she really learned from um his death or something. It's like that's great. It'd been nice if they learned that lesson while that person was still in their lives
Mm-hmm.
and could have actually benefited from it. But this isn't a rambling about him. This is a rambling about Adric.
Yeah.
Um, Kinda.
Kinda.
If
Kinda, kinda, kinda.
Four to Doomsday was his why is Nissa getting all the attention? Kinda is his why is Tegan getting all the attention?
I was going to, like, Kinda is almost Adric going, "Shut up, bitch." Like
Yeah,
it's a microcosm away from that.
yeah, it's horrendous, and it makes him out to be really like Kinda and Four to Doomsday make him out to be so stupid, which we know he isn't.
Mm.
Do you know? And in fact, he does try to play both sides and whatever, but he's just so fucking bad at it. Um, and his whole thing with like the you know mechanical armor
Mm.
gun thing
Yeah.
and not being able to control it, and then be like, "Oh no, I was fine." I'm like, "Oh my god, fuck off."
Yeah.
I think really Kinda was my fuck off you annoying teenage boy. I think like
Like it just got progressively worse, like, because it starts off with him gloating over the fact that he beats a clearly very ill and exhausted Nissa in a game of drafts,
mm,
and he's gloating over that, like, well done, like you beat a patient, kudos. And then it kind of the thing where he picks up the stick and just does what all fucking annoying bratty kids does, which is like start playing with the chimes. It's like you just stop looking for attention. Stop it. And then there's going into the mechanical suit and then throwing hissy fit. It was like, oh well, I would have fucking figured it out if you hadn't gotten in the way. And it's like, yes, and what part of destruction would you have wreaked before you fucking finally figured it out? You know. Um. It's like someone finding like a fucking machine gun and kind of going, "All right, no, I managed to finally put the safety on after I emptied the clip."
Yeah. Yeah, but again though,
Um,
like I don't want to excuse his behavior as just like the doctor changed and then suddenly Adric just went off the fucking rails altogether.
mm,
Um, but again, this child is your ward. Maybe fucking talk to him properly. Do you know? Like, you know, I think from Adric's perspective, it's like his dad died and then he got this new stepdad who's a prick, except they're the same
mm,
person. you know?
yeah.
And the change happened in a day. And he's like, what the fuck? It's like the cries for attention. I mean, at that age, you kind of hope that he'd be beyond it or whatever. It's not really an excuse, but like, here's a thought. Maybe actually give him some attention and have a real conversation with him,
Mm.
and he'd stop acting out. And you'd actually find out what's wrong.
But I can't do that because I have cricket to play, woman.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But no, we're drifting off course again.
No, no, we're drifting. No, no, this is
Yeah.
like fucking any conversation that involves Stephen. No, no, Adric.
Yes.
Adric had some fucking duds of episodes where he was
Mm.
an inconsistent, chauvinistic donkey of a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, literally in the case of like he is the boy that gets like caught up in like with Honest John and Pinocchio and ends up on that fucking island
Yeah.
with a fucking horse's ass. Um, but he did have some good episodes as well.
Mm. Also, thank you for reminding me just how fucking creepy the original Pinocchio cartoon is.
It is
Jesus
so
Christ!
terrifying. It is absolutely horrendous.
It, it's like when you're when you watch The Prince of Egypt as a kid, and then you get to an adult, and you're like, "Holy fuck! How the fuck is that movie a cartoon?"
Yeah, I
Um,
like it's yeah. Pinocchio is probably the one Disney film I do not see them ever doing in live action.
but they've done it in live action.
They have done it in live action. Shit. Did they do it in live
Yeah,
action?
they did.
When?
Like 2 years ago.
Okay,
I think
that
it was
fucking
actually
flew
maybe.
under my radar.
Actually, I think it might have been one of the launch titles for when Disney Plus was a thing. So it might be even
Okay,
a
no,
lot
hold on.
older than that.
Hold on.
It's the one with Tom Hanks.
Oh, okay. Do you know what? I think there was like four different Pinocchios that came out at the same time, and so I think I missed the Disney one.
Apparently, like, and this is one thing I found out. Apparently, in the original story, he kills Jiminy Cricket, and it's Jiminy Cricket's ghost that's the conscience.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Okay, okay, so yeah, no, there is a Disney version. I clearly
yeah.
just removed all Pinocchio references from my historic
Hmm.
memory. See, this is also why, like, I have said this to people in work on several occasions. Um, Paddy is my external hard drive.
Mhm.
He remembers things so I don't have to. And if I'm ever not sure of something that I have known in the past, I ask Paddy and he says, yes, you did know this. It was this. Like TV programs I've watched, or people I've met,
Yeah,
or people's names of people that I've known for 19 fucking years. Um, yeah, so thank you for being my external hard drive. Very helpful. Um,
you're welcome.
circling back on track once more.
Yes. Um, I don't know about you, but what I will say is that I found it much easier to pick the worst episodes than I did the best episodes because I had a lot of ones that were shortlisted for the top three spots.
I didn't. I kind of knew going into putting my notes together which ones I was going to pick. The
Mm-hmm.
I had one that I wasn't sure of. But as in I wasn't sure whether to put it in as an honorable mention. I don't think I was ever
Mm.
going to put it in the top three, but I was tempted to put it in as an honorable mention. Um, So 3, 2, 1, worst, best to best.
Mhm.
Um, I have Keeper of Draken, Full Circle, and Legopolis.
We're 66% there again.
Okay, what do you have?
I have, so my bronze, silver, gold,
Mm.
Keeper of Traken, Earthshock, Legopolis.
Earthshock is my honorable mention.
Full Circle was my honorable mention.
Um, I'll explain why Earthshock was my honorable mention.
Okay.
I put Earthshock as my honorable mention because while I fully agreed with pretty much everything Adric had to say at the beginning of that story, he was upset, he wanted a home, blah 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 blah. It's not the most reflective of the journey Adric has had. The end of the episode, though, certainly very reflective of the journey that Adric has come on. But he has that whiny bit at the beginning, justifiably whiny, but still whiny. He has a bit of a lull in the middle, and then he has the fantastic, brilliant moment at the end. Um, and for me, I just didn't think it stacked up as well with the other three. And I think a lot of that actually has to do with the fact that like he didn't get a goodbye with Nissa. I think that actually really bothered me more than I thought about. Actually, now that I'm speaking out loud, um, he didn't get a proper goodbye, and that makes me sad.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's my reason.
Hmm. Um. So with Full Circle, it brought me back to a conversation we had a long time ago, which was, is a character's very first story, because we're all about the journey. You and I were all about character development.
Mm,
Putting their first appearance into a top three spot, is that like a reflective thing? Because we had it with the Time Warrior, and like I was back and forth over like Time Warrior, great story for Sarah Jane, but it's her first story, and like she has got some absolute belters as she progresses. But Time Warrior is so good. Here, I had a very similar conversation in my head, but it was much shorter, and I didn't think Full Circle. While it's a very good Adric story, I personally thought that Earthshock was a better one for him.
I think the other challenge I would put to you,
Mm,
and we can discuss this in more detail when we get to your actual full discussion of Earthshock. But
mm.
something I want you to think about as we talk through Keep of Draken. Would you have ranked Earthshock so highly if Adric hadn't died?
It's a very good question.
And you can take some
Um,
time to think about
well,
it.
cool. Let's talk about keyword tracking.
I really like Keeper of Draken. I think for Adric it's a fun story, even though like he's sidelined for a fair bit of it. Um, but he's sidelined with Nissa, and I love their dynamic in To Keep of Draken. It's so good. Um, but also we get to see the dynamic between the Doctor and Adric in the terms of the ward or the student or whatever and the mentor, which is great. And for all of the issues that were between them behind the scenes, it looks amazing on screen. It's a really
Mm,
good dynamic. It it's really like, who are they without Romana? This is
mm,
who they are, like Batman and Robin, type thing. Um, he is sidelined for a considerable amount of it, but he's sidelined in a way that he's sidelined with trust. It's not just Adric needs to stay out of the way. It's okay. We need to so Adric needs to stay safe. We don't want to get Adric in trouble. But I love at the end of the story when Adric, he explains to Nissa what he's going to do. He doesn't just, again, if we're thinking about chauvinistic Adric of literally a season later, who would never ask for anyone's fucking opinion before doing something completely moronic or really dangerous or whatever. He asked her opinion, explained what it would mean. He wouldn't do it if she didn't understand it, which I thought was lovely. He clearly wanted her approval, but also he knew exactly what was needed to the point where the doctor just threw out a number, knowing Adric would know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fantastic. And that, in terms of the Nissa dynamic, in terms of the doctor dynamic, in terms of the trust, in terms of the portrayal of his intelligence, is why his run with Peter Davison pisses me off so much,
Mm.
because it's such a massive U-turn for his development as a character. Um,
Yeah.
but Keeper of Chalk, and like, the reason why it's not higher is because he is sidelined considerably for it, and obviously there's the
Mm.
more important aspects of that story. Adric is a very small part of it, but if you want a nice introduction to Adric as a character, I think Keeper is a
Mm-hmm.
really nice one to sink your teeth into.
It really is. It really is. Like I know. I think it actually just kind of struck me there. Himself and Nissa's relationship, it kind of reminds you of Violet and Klaus from the Lemony Snicket movie.
Mm,
Just like they're both very clever. They both work very well together because they have their own separate skill sets. Um, so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But I think the pinnacle moment is when he pilots the TARDIS into the room and the doctor just calls out the number and he's like, "Aha, on it." Um, and it is the fact that Adric comes in and saves the day. Well, Adric and Nissa,
mm,
but they're the ones to come in and facilitate the saving of the day, which is great, and I really enjoyed it. And like Keep Tracking is, yeah, I used to say, like, it's a story. It's got an awful lot of moving parts, and they all keep you invested. But every relationship Adric has in that story, so it's with Nissa and with Tremas and with the Doctor, it's just all good. Like
mm.
there's nothing in it where I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, Adric, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree. So then I have Full Circle,
Yes.
and you have Earthshock.
Shock.
So you and I have gone back and forth on the whole, can a person's first story count as one of their best? And I
Mm-hmm.
understand where you come from in terms of we
Mm-hmm.
don't see the development, whatever.
Yeah.
I think though there are certain stories and definitely certain characters where I'm like, fuck it, the first was the best.
Yeah.
One is, like you said, the likes of Time War, which is just such a fucking dinger of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Sarah Jane as the characters coming out swinging, brilliant patrol. Then you have ones like, I'd maybe say The Chase for Stephen, in a
Mm-hmm.
way, um, and now Full Circle for Adric, where it's like they did a really good job of creating an interesting character who's complex, who's well structured. We get to see that he's maybe, from a modern viewing perspective, he's maybe not what we think he is. So again,
Mm-hmm.
if we just take the example of Stephen for a second, he is a space pilot. He's a bit charismatic. He's whatever, and he has a teddy bear called Wi-Fi or Hi-Fi or whatever it was. Hi-Fi, not Wi-Fi.
High five.
Hi-Fi. And he's brave, and he'll fight through anything to free himself and blah blah blah. Which then just goes continually fucking downhill from that point on, actually. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think with Adric it's the same, where because so much of his story is so inconsistent, unlike the likes of, say, a Sarah Jane or a Leela or Romana One in particular, who have good development sort of throughout, or like Ian and Barbara and many of our other companions. I think with Adric and his first story, I think it's important to recognize who he was meant to be. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to who he was in stories like Fort of Doomsday and Warrior's Gate and that kind of shit. So, like, with Full Circle, we see his bravery, we see his confidence, we see his caring nature, we see his intelligence. And I remember at the time we talked about it, I was like, why don't people like him? Like,
Yes, yeah.
I
I
didn't
remember we
get it.
had that conversation point.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why I put this over Earthshock is A, it's just a good story in general, right? Call it
Mm,
spade a spade.
mm,
It's a good story in general. Adric has some great moments in it. Um, but I think, if you get caught up in, the likes of Kinda and the others, you can kind of forget who he was meant to be.
mm,
I think it's important that who he was meant to be was kind of cool.
yeah. Um, and you actually mentioned someone there that I would have to slightly disagree with you in terms
Mm.
of like the development. Leela under Philip Hinchcliffe, she was fantastic. But then
Well,
when
yeah,
Gareth Edwards took over, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
then it became the fucking whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I made a realization there, and I don't know whether I actually made the realization at the time and I forgot it. And I did have to go back and I had to take a look at Leela's rambling, okay?
Mm,
And I I think I made the realization that because Face of Evil was in my top three,
mm.
and I actually want to just take a look at while I'm here. Sorry to hold up the whole show. Just need to double check
As if we
something.
don't have the ability to edit it out if we want to.
I know technology, tinted amazing. Um, yeah, and because I did it, we did the ranking for Romana One, and I had Rybos in the fourth position behind Pirate Planet. But I think the reason that Full Circle is an honorable mention as opposed to in the top three is that it just didn't have that same level of impact for me as Time Warrior and Face of Evil did.
Mm.
Like, it, Full Circle is a very good showing for Adric. One or two bits in it where I'm like, fuck off. And as I said, there's one part in my original talk about there was one part in it that it did break some of my immersion for me, and that was the direction of the scene where Romana gets bitten and Adric goes into the TARDIS, and the exterior
Yeah,
shot is
we have
the
to
door
we
closed.
have to. When is a door not a door?
Yeah, that type of thing. And but yeah, it just didn't have that same level of impact for me as Time Warrior and Face of Evil did. But
Mm,
I'm not discounting anything you're saying about Full Circle.
mm.
It's just I suppose it just boils down to personal preference.
Yeah.
In relation to Earthshock, there is an awful lot I like about Earthshock that I think would still carry over if the Doctor was able to save Adric in the last second. And it starts off with him actually calling the Doctor out on his bullshit. Like, what is your promise worth? Asked Tegan. And then he says it a small bit cheekily, but the argument is valid. Since he's regenerated, he's become very immature. And it's a thing that we've talked about. You cannot deny that Peter's Doctor, up until now, is a like dude, come on, you're meant to be however many hundreds of years old. You're acting more childish than the children are.
Mm.
Um, but it's once they find their their rhythm again, once they're back to being okay, yeah, uh, we're friends. Everything Adric does in the story, I enjoy. He refuses to let the Doctor go and try and disarm the bomb by himself. He has good interactions, as we said, like with the supporting characters like Scott and not Briggs, but the other female character,
Oh yeah, yeah.
the
I've
navigation
forgotten his
officer.
name, but I know human. I've forgotten her name rather, but I know human.
Yeah. Um, but like, and then it's just like at the end, like even before the end, before he makes that final dash out to solve the final lock, his presence on the bridge and it just this calmness he has when he tells the Doctor, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out together," or wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then it's just this calm, cool, collected nature of trying to disable the logic locks. You know, like he's 15 years old, yet he takes command, and the others pick up on it, and I think that's where the level of respect from Scott and that officer just go up for him, and I think that then adds to the emotion. We said it adds to the emotional impact of Adric's passing in the story. But even if the Doctor did come and save him at the very last moment, everything he would have done up until that point, it's a great showing from Adric, I think.
Hmm. I think the only reason why I get the whole would you have still thought the same if Adric hadn't died is a final story where someone dies or a death story in general as a favorite. I always have to try and say, well, okay, if the character hadn't died, would I still think of it in the same way?
Yeah.
So if the Doctor had saved him at the last minute, or if Adric had worked out the lock at the last minute,
Mm-hmm.
um, so the thing didn't explode, it's fine. Would we still have seen him, dashing out of the escape pod in the same way? Would we still see it as heroic rather than someone trying to play hero? Do you know? But that's just a question that I challenge myself with anything where it's like the super emotional thing. Like, say, Hand of Fear. Would I have loved Hand of Fear as much if Sarah hadn't left at the end?
Mm.
Yes, yes, I would, because Hand of Fear is amazing,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
Eldred must live.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
but that's just my thing. I totally agree with everything you said, though. Um,
I just think like with Adric's thing, it's like it's no different than the roll of a dice in a tabletop RPG. You know,
mm,
you take the action, and like if you succeed or you fail, how do people remember your character for doing the heroic action?
yeah. But then we have Logopolis, and the reason I put Logopolis on top over all of the other ones is because in many ways I think Logopolis is the height of Adric's character development.
Mm.
It's showing how much he's grown. It's showing how much he's developed as a person. Um, well, we get to that in Earthshock as well. It fucking lulled there for a while and went
Mm.
backwards, whatever. Whereas Logopolis is, it's a really good story anyway, but it's just we get to see all these different elements of Adric that we've talked
Mm.
about before, but in a setting, and actually in two settings that are more alien to him than anything else:
Yeah.
modern day Earth and Logopolis itself. And particularly the modern day Earth thing where he just like hops on a bicycle and, you know, does whatever,
F- fucking
he,
love that.
you know, tries to blag his way with the guards and everything, and we can see how much he's grown with his time with the Doctor, how much he's learned about Earth and Earth society, and he's so happy that he knows his numbers and his letters, uh, which is just the funniest thing ever. His excitement over seeing Nissa
Mm.
again, and he's so excited to see her, but also his keen awareness that something's happening with the Doctor. This white figure is something important, and doing everything he can to be like, well, nothing. I'm not going to let anything happen to him. Like, hello. Like, even though the Doctor clearly has a plan, Adric is just like, I don't give a shit what your plan is, because your plan to me looks fucking dodgy. So we're gonna protect you and make sure whatever. Um, while he does have like he has one weird moment with Tegan, which I think is just a weirdly written line. Um, he's again very protective of the two of them, Tegan
Mm.
and Nissa. Um, he did the whole picking the locks thing the whole way through the TARDIS or whatever, which I found hilarious. Um, but also his excitement at the idea that he might get to go to Gallifrey.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about this earlier as I was writing my notes, I was thinking about Earthshock and the fact that like Adric wrote about how he doesn't have a home and whatever. I'm so gutted Adric never got to go to Gallifrey because you totally know that um, if Dr. Tom Hand regenerated,
Hmm.
what if Adric started to feel the same way for whatever reason? You know Tom would have dropped him off with Leela.
Hmm.
Do you know he would have taken him to Gallifrey, been like, look, go stir up some shit there, you develop your mind, it'd be fantastic, off you go. And he would have found, I think he would have found a great family with Leela as well, um, and stuff like that. So it kind of makes me sad that like my favorite story of Adric is one where he really wants to go to Gallifrey, and then he never does,
Mm.
and he never will because he's dead.
Yes,
Um,
he did it. It did.
how about you? Why was Legopas on top of your list?
Um, pretty much for a lot of the reasons you said there. It's like I think first and foremost, what comes out is this. He's almost like this emotional tether to what's
Mm,
going on with the Doctor, and as well, um, his connection with Nissa. You know, because she's clearly just seen a horribly, or she's had a horribly traumatic revelation given to her, and he needs to try and help her through that. But also, there's something going on with the Doctor that is affecting him, and Roman isn't around anymore. So who's going to protect the Doctor if not me?
mm,
And like he refuses to be, you know, you don't put Adric in a corner type scenario. Um, but then when it comes to, as I said, the bit with the bicycle, I thought that was fucking brilliant and the big stupid smile on his face. Um, then the logic loop within the TARDIS itself, but his man of action nature when it came to helping out the controller on Legopolis,
mm,
and then just everything there, that was fantastic. And it's nice that you actually see that immediately carry over into Castrovalva. It's just unfortunate that for Castrovalva he's, Pearls of Pauline. Um, but Legopolis is, it had so much promise for what was to come, you
mm,
know? And I I'm sad that that it was the end of what was to come, but I'm also sad it was the end of Tom's run with Adric because of whatever about their personal relationship. Their in the Doctor and Adric's relationship at that stage was great.
yeah, yeah. No, I would agree. And I think when you watch them in Logopolis and then you watch something like Forty Doomsday or something like Kinda or the Visitation or any of those other ones that came after, um, you're kind of like you get it. Do you know? Like you get why he is kind of the way he is. Do you know? He lost something very important to him,
Mm.
and he doesn't see himself getting it back because, like, if you compare the way he reacts to Tegan and Nissa in this in Legopolis versus the way he acts with them in other stories, he clearly was super excited to have more people around. Do you know?
Mm.
Like, of course Nissa should travel with us. Of course she should. Like, it's fucking brilliant. To then 2 stories later just being like, oh, why does Nissa get to? I was like, oh, fuck off, Adric. Um, I do strongly believe that if people only watched Adric in his Tom Baker era, then the sort of negative impression of him either wouldn't exist or wouldn't be anywhere near as bad as what it actually is.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, but look, I think for a character who's been so up and down, I think we've had some great discussion points.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's been a long time since the character has died, as we've mentioned.
Yep.
Um, and do you know what? Like I said, like even though I would have Earthshock as my honorable mention, at least he ended on a good outing. Do you know?
Yes.
In your case, one of his best. In my case, just outside one of his
An
best,
honorable mention.
but certainly a
Yeah.
very good outing. Um, and yeah. But next week we're going to be continuing with our current crew. You
I
said we'd
before
finished the
we.
season. We haven't, by the way.
Oh
We still
yeah,
have time
sorry.
flight to go.
Yeah, we still have time flight. Um, quick question:
Yeah.
if Matthew Waterhouse was at a con, would you meet him?
Yes.
No.
I'd actually love to talk to him because
Hmm.
it just sounds so fascinating. Like being a fan of the show at that age, getting on the show and then having these fucking ridiculous back like behind the scenes
Mm.
dramas and whatever. I actually would quite like to meet him.
Yeah, I think that's like we've kind of for you. That's a mark of a success of a companion as to whether or not you'd like to meet them in real life.
Well, first, I'd like to meet most of them. I'd like to meet Peter Purvis just to apologise for how much I've shat on his character. Um, um, but yeah, no, I would quite like to meet him.
Mm.
Um, like I said, there's people that I have had the opportunity to meet in the past and I didn't, and I'm fucking kicking myself over. So
Did you get to
looking at
meet
you,
Richard
Louise Jameson.
Franklin?
What?
Did you get to meet Richard Franklin? Mike Yates.
Did I get to meet Richard Franklin? I didn't.
Mm.
I have his autograph because I bought it during COVID. Showmasters was doing a an autograph sale.
Mm.
That's also where I got Will Wheaton's autograph. Um, but no, I did not get to meet Richard Franklin. I got to meet
Okay.
John Levine and John Leeson, but
Mhm.
no, I never got to meet Richard Franklin. I don't think.
Okay.
I'm gonna be kicking myself now if I'm wrong, but I don't. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think he was in any of the group pictures you
No,
were a part of.
no, no. So I don't think I ever had the opportunity to either. To be honest, I don't think he was ever at an event that I was going
Yeah.
to. So this is not like it's not like with Louise Jameson where I could have met her and I fucking didn't because
Yeah.
I hadn't watched her stuff yet.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I actually I would quite like to meet him. But like I
Well,
said,
no, he's dead now.
no, not Richard Franklin.
Oh, Matthew Waterhouse. Okay.
Yes, back
All
to
right.
you.
I was like, wait. Yeah. Cool.
Fucking eat
Uh,
it. But yes, so next week we are back with Time Flight, which will be the final
yes.
episode of the current season. Just a
Hmm.
reminder, it is going to have to score 4s or above to, you know, have a good round out to the season. Because currently it ain't doing so good.
No.
But that is us for another week. If you have thoughts on Adric, though, we would love to hear them. If you would like to hear my thoughts on why I hate Steve Rogers as a character, particularly in the MCU, then we can have that discussion at another time.
Yes.
Oh.
People will be saving that up for our end of year podcast
Yeah.
episode for
Why
2024.
does Trish hate Steve Rogers?
A 5-hour extravaganza.
Oh. No, I'm not going to get into it because actually this rambling will go on for the 5 hours, and Paddy wants to go to bed.
Yes.
Talk to you next time.
Yep. Until next week, guys. Bye.
Bye.